On March 1st, 2026, the world awoke to the unthinkable. Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, Iran's supreme leader for over 35 years, was dead. He was killed in a sudden, devastating military strike that obliterated his heavily fortified Tehran compound, leaving nothing but smoldering ruins where the heart of Iran's power once stood. The attack was swift, precise, and left no doubt about its intent. The news sent shockwaves through Iran and across the globe, instantly redrawing the geopolitical map. Within minutes, headlines blared across every major network, and social media erupted with disbelief and speculation. The world's attention was riveted on Tehran as uncertainty spread like wildfire. In Tehran, public grief and defiant chants filled the streets. Mourners gathered in massive crowds, some weeping openly, others shouting slogans against foreign enemies. But beneath the mourning, millions quietly wondered if this was the crack in the regime's iron grip, the moment that could change everything. Emergency meetings erupted in Western capitals as leaders scrambled to assess the fallout. Iran's allies and rivals alike braced for chaos, fearing the unpredictable consequences of such a seismic event. Global markets teetered on the edge, fearing a regional war that could choke off the world's oil supply. Investors panicked and oil prices soared overnight as the specter of conflict loomed large. The U.S. and Israel claimed responsibility, with President Trump declaring the strike a necessary blow against one of the most evil people in history. The announcement was bold, unapologetic, and sent a clear message to Iran and the world. This was no covert operation, it was a public declaration of war, thrusting the world into a new era of uncertainty. Military forces across the region were put on high alert, and the threat of escalation hung heavy in the air. For Iran, it was a moment of both hope and terror, as the nation stared into a leadership vacuum unseen since the 1979 revolution. The future was suddenly wide open, and no one knew who or what would fill the void. The world now stood at the edge of a precipice, holding its breath and waiting for what would come next. The death of the supreme leader was not just the end of an era, it was the beginning of a dangerous new chapter in global history. Operation Epic Fury was the result of years of intelligence and planning, a joint U.S.-Israeli mission to decapitate Iran's leadership in one swift blow. In the early hours of February 28, 2026, precision-guided missiles tore through Khamenei's fortified compound, targeting not just the supreme leader, but his entire inner circle. Satellite images revealed surgical devastation, key buildings reduced to rubble, while others stood untouched. The strike eliminated top military and nuclear officials, including Khamenei's chief advisors and the head of Iran's secretive nuclear program. The attack shattered Iran's command structure, crippling both its military leadership and nuclear ambitions in minutes. The operation showcased a terrifying level of military precision, sending a clear message of overwhelming power. President Pezeshkian survived, but the regime's hardline core was decimated. Operation Epic Fury achieved its immediate goal, but unleashed consequences that now threatened to engulf the entire region. The world watched as Iran's leadership was left in ruins, and the stakes soared higher than ever. Khamenei was more than a head of state. He was the axis around which Iran's entire system revolved. For over 3 decades, he shaped the nation's destiny, wielding power that reached far beyond the ceremonial. As supreme leader, his authority was absolute, shaping every facet of Iranian life and projecting power across the Middle East. Every major decision, from domestic policy to foreign intervention, bore his unmistakable imprint. He unified Iran's military, judiciary, and media, imprinting his ideology on every institution. Under his rule, dissent was suppressed and loyalty was rewarded, ensuring the regime's survival through turbulent times. His death is not just the loss of a leader, but the collapse of the regime's center of gravity. The vacuum left behind threatens to unravel the delicate balance he maintained. Khamenei's influence extended to proxy forces from Lebanon to Yemen, making him the linchpin of the region's anti-Western alliance. His guidance unified disparate groups under a common cause, amplifying Iran's reach. Now, his assassination has left Iran's network of allies leaderless and vulnerable to infighting. Without his direction, these groups face uncertainty and the risk of fragmentation. The regime faces a crisis of legitimacy, succession, and command, all at once. Factions within the government and military are scrambling to assert control, deepening the instability. For Iran, this is a humiliation and a profound shock to the system. The public's grief is mixed with anxiety about what comes next, as uncertainty grips the nation. The world is left to wonder if the Islamic Republic can survive the loss of its pillar, or if the entire structure will come crashing down. Allies and adversaries alike are watching for the first signs of what the future holds. The stakes for Iran and the region have never been higher. What happens next will shape not just Iran's future, but the fate of the entire Middle East. The sudden death of Khamenei created a perilous power vacuum in Iran. The constitution calls for an interim council and a new supreme leader within 50 days, but the chain of command was shattered by the strike. Many senior officials who would oversee the transition are dead, leaving the assembly of experts to choose a successor amid chaos and external threats. Rivalries that once simmered in the shadows now threaten to erupt into open conflict, with Khamenei's son and surviving officials vying for control. Iran must manage public mourning, internal unrest, and the prospect of war, all without a clear leader. Factions within the regime may pull in different directions, risking paralysis or reckless escalation. The IRGC's loyalty was to Khamenei personally. A new leader may not command the same respect. The succession process, already fraught, has become a desperate scramble for power. Iran is a ship in a hurricane, rudderless, battered, and facing an uncertain future. In the wake of Khamenei's death, Iran declared 40 days of national mourning, filling the airwaves with somber tributes and black banners. But beneath the mourning, the regime issued furious calls for vengeance, vowing the most violent response in Iran's history against the US and Israel. Iran's military mobilized missile and drone units readied air defenses on high alert, and naval forces positioned to threaten the Strait of Hormuz. Every strategic asset was placed on a war footing, signaling that Iran would not absorb this blow quietly. The regime's survival now depends on delivering a powerful response. Failure would be seen as weakness, risking internal dissent and regional irrelevance. The period of mourning is also one of preparation, as Iran readies itself for war. The world waits, knowing the coming storm could reshape the Middle East. The countdown to retaliation has begun. Khamenei's assassination is a geopolitical earthquake, threatening to ignite a full-scale regional war. The shockwaves are being felt far beyond Iran's borders, as governments scramble to assess the fallout and brace for what comes next. Iran's vow of maximum retaliation could mean missile strikes on Israel, attacks on U.S. bases, or attempts to close the vital Strait of Hormuz. The world is watching anxiously as military assets are mobilized and red lines are tested in real time. Even the threat of conflict has sent global markets into panic, with oil prices spiking and fears of a worldwide recession mounting. Investors are dumping risky assets, and central banks are preparing for emergency interventions. The Persian Gulf, the world's energy lifeline, is now a flashpoint. Any disruption could cripple economies and trigger hardship for billions. Nearly a third of global oil passes through these waters, making the stakes higher than ever. The political fallout is just as severe. Alliances are strained and nations are being forced to choose sides. Old rivalries are resurfacing, and diplomatic channels are buzzing with urgent negotiations. Russia and China condemn the strike, but face tough choices about supporting a destabilized Iran. Their next moves could reshape the balance of power in the region for years to come. Europe, blindsided by the attack, braces for potential terror and a new refugee crisis. Security is tightening across the continent, and humanitarian agencies are on high alert. The international order, already fragile, is now in jeopardy. Calls for restraint echo in the halls of the United Nations, but uncertainty reigns. The next 72 hours are critical. A single miscalculation could spark a conflict bigger than anything the region has seen. Military planners are working around the clock, hoping to prevent catastrophe. The world stands on the brink, with the ripple effects of Operation Epic Fury only beginning to spread. As uncertainty deepens, every nation is forced to confront the reality of a new, more dangerous era. The strike on Khamenei was the climax of years of escalating violence. A ladder climbed one rung at a time. It began with assassinations of Iran's regional allies, Hezbollah's Nasrallah, Hamas's Sinwar, and Houthi leaders, each strike provoking vows of revenge and hardening positions. The conflict escalated to direct attacks on Iran's nuclear sites, signaling a new era of confrontation. Inside Iran, economic collapse and mass protests exposed deep fractures, tempting Washington and Jerusalem to strike while the regime was weak. Now, with Khamenei gone, the region teeters at the highest rung, just short of all-out war. Tehran faces a dilemma: retaliate and risk annihilation, or hold back and appear weak. The regime's credibility is on the line. Backing down is almost unthinkable. The path of escalation has left no easy exits. The world waits to see if the next step is war, or something even worse. For the US and Israel, Operation Epic Fury was a calculated gamble, an attempt to end Iran's nuclear ambitions and regional aggression once and for all, the hope that decapitating the regime would trigger collapse or at least chaos, setting back Iran's military for a generation. President Trump framed the strike as liberation, urging Iranians to rise up, but the risks are enormous. The assassination of a head of state breaks international norms and could rally Iranians around the flag. Even within the US, the strike has sparked fierce debate and warnings of unintended consequences. Instead of collapse, the regime could become more dangerous, united by anger and fear. The dice have been thrown. The world waits to see if this gamble brings peace or catastrophe. The future of the Middle East hangs in the balance. Khamenei's death is a turning point, shattering the old order of the Middle East. The certainties of the past are gone. The region faces a future defined by uncertainty and risk. What happens next in Iran will shape the fate of the entire region: war, collapse, or unexpected change. The US and Israel have made their move, but now bear responsibility for the chaos unleashed. Other powers can no longer remain on the sidelines. The global economy and security are at stake. The assassination marks the violent end of one era and the frightening beginning of another. The world of yesterday is gone, replaced by a void where anything is possible. The story of the new Middle East is about to be written, and it will involve us all.